My name is Alexander, and I'm from the Swedish National Board of the Klimatstudenterna Sverige. And I'm here today with some of my other board members from the Swedish group. And we will be talking briefly on one of our reoccurring and one of our biggest projects that we do in the board, which is called the Climate Action Ranking. And what this is it's basically a ranking of the climate work from Swedish universities and other higher education institutions. So we try to gather as much information as possible and rank how well they're doing when it comes to different aspects of their environmental work. So here's the graphics from our ranking that we did this year. It's all the figures and everything that we are looking at are from the year of 2020 in this one, but we released it now in 2021 during the spring. And as you can see, the total score that any university could get was 100 points. And in the top, we had two institutions. One called Chalmers, it's a technical university. They have mostly engineering educations. And then there's a philosophical and theological higher education institution called Newman Institutet. They both received 89 points in this last ranking, which is a pretty good figure. But before we get too much into the results and all of that, why are we doing the ranking? Well, the main goal and the main reason why we do the ranking is because we believe that the work is going too slow when it comes to the mitigation and climate work from the universities. And so the ranking is done in a way as a tool to kind of push and put pressure on the universities and the decision makers and the ones with the power of deciding how much they do. And we also, by doing that, want to create a sense of competition among the different universities, because a lot of universities put a lot of focus on prestige and values that are about being a very good university. And we believe that the climate work should also be a part of that calculation, of that sense of like being a progressive or a very good university. But we also do it to monitor and measure the climate work and to get a good sense of how much different universities are doing, which we in turn can use in our local groups, because we aim to have like a very good communication with the different universities where we have groups, and we give them some tools to be able to approach and talk to the universities about their climate work. As I said in the beginning, it's one of many ways to tackle the issue of mitigation from universities, and it's a very, we believe, effective way if we get the right like medial spread of the ranking. So we've done the ranking now for 2 years. And right now we are in the process of beginning the third ranking for the year of 2021, which will then be released next year during the spring. So the ranking is based partly on a survey that we send out to the environmental coordinators of the different universities and higher education institutions. And the survey covers their measurements of emissions and their targets and goals for reducing their emissions. And we also base this on data of their emissions from business travels by air per annual employee from 2019 and 2020. And we are very fortunate to be able to gather these figures, because it's one of the things that the universities need to actually report to the Environmental Protection Agency in Sweden. So they have they have the raw data on how big the emissions are from their business travels by air. So we can also use that figure, and then we can both account for how big the emissions are, and also how big their emission reductions are from business travels by air. So those are two other categories. So here we have them. The first one, as I said, was the emission per employee per year from business travels by air, and emission reduction per annual employee from business travels by air between the ranking year and the previous one. And then the two categories that are covered by the survey are the number 3 and 4, how much they measured the university's total greenhouse gas emissions, and the climate goals and action plans. So the part 1 of the form, or the survey, is the measurement of the emissions. And here we are basically asking them in what degree they are measuring the emissions from a bunch of different sectors or parts of the university's work, or all of the things they do. And the main focus here is on like energy, heating, transportation and travel, but also other stuff like food consumption or investments to a certain degree. So we try to really cover as much as possible. And here we are basically saying that we value higher if the universities are measuring and actually keeping track on how big their emissions are. Because if they do, then they can actually take appropriate measures to do something with that. And we've gathered the kind of idea to measure this from this NTNU, or NTNU, which is a Norwegian, I don't know exactly what they are, but they've done like this kind of division in how you can see the climate footprint. So here we got in kind of the base ideas for the factors or the sectors of the university activity that we are looking at. And then the second part of the form, I'm just gonna have to move around stuff on my screen a little bit so I can see what you're seeing. There we are looking at the goals and action plans for different areas of their emissions. So we ask, like, do you have emission goals or an action plan for example, travels? And they get to answer if they do or not. And then we've also been looking at how they formulate the goal, how many people are, if they have like someone who's actually hired to work with these goals, if they have an action plan, and if they do continuous follow-up. And here we are really looking for universities that have a clear idea of where they want to be with their emissions and what they want to, like how they're going to get there. So if you have a good goals and a plan to get there, that will give you a higher point. This part has been a little bit problematic in the past years when trying to evaluate the quality of the goals and set fair points, because the way the survey has been shaped before has really opened up for a lot of half-truths and maybe not the most honest answers. And we've also kind of, we haven't had a very clear idea when doing the evaluation of how much a certain goal should be worth in points in the survey or in the ranking. So for this year, we're going to look over how we are measuring the goals and emissions, but we still stand true that we think that it's a very important part to measure. Before we go into the questions, I just want to add also that the first year, but especially this year's ranking, we've been really trying to push on the medial spread to get it to really get out to a lot of people. We want it to be seen by many, and that's partly because it's important, and we want it to be we want it to be a natural thing that people think about when they consider choosing a university, or when you talk about the university. It shouldn't only be focused on the academic merits. It should also be, but hey, they are doing a very good work with their emissions. They are actually taking a lead. And to kind of capitalize as much as possible on this, we have released the rankings on the same days that applications open for the fall semester, which is in Sweden is on the 15th of April. And this year we actually got a pretty good environmental coverage, both from smaller smaller newspapers, but also in some of the bigger ones, which are reporting on sustainability news in Sweden. And that has been very fun.